The cold night wraps around the girl as she stands frozen before the tall figure who emerged from the sleek black car, and her breath hangs in the air like a thin fragile thread that might snap at any moment as she tries to decide whether to run or stay, while her mind trembles with the memory of the taunts she escaped only moments before. The alley stretches behind her like a long, narrow throat ready to swallow her if she dares to step back into it, and the distant echo of footsteps from the school grounds makes her heart drum harder as she imagines the bullies discovering her empty hiding place and realizing the window had allowed her to slip away. The figure before her speaks again, his voice low and smooth, yet carrying an edge of authority that makes her chest tighten, because it feels almost impossible for someone like him to look at someone like her, and she wonders if the shadows are playing tricks on her, or if this moment is truly happening under the pale wash of the street lamp. She cannot bring herself to speak, and instead she watches him carefully, studying the shape of his silhouette, the confident way he stands as though the world around him bends to his decisions, and she wonders why such a person would be standing in a deserted alley this late at night, and why fate has placed him directly in her desperate path. He steps closer, and the sound of his polished shoes brushing against the gravel mixes with the rushing of her pulse as she tries to control her fear, yet something in the way he moves tells her that he does not intend to harm her, and that his presence carries a purpose she cannot yet grasp. A breeze flows through the alley, stirring loose strands of her hair, and she feels the cold seep deeper into her skin as she wonders how long she has until the bullies decide to search the grounds more thoroughly, because she knows they will not stop until they find her and make her pay for running. The man tilts his head as though he is observing something beyond her appearance, something hidden beneath the bruises and trembling breaths, and she feels strangely exposed, as though he can see her entire life written across her face, and she wishes she could hide, yet at the same time she feels a pull toward him that makes little sense. He says he noticed her running, and the words seem simple, yet the meaning behind them sends a strange shiver down her spine, for she realizes that he must have been watching her from the moment he turned onto the street, and she wonders whether he thought she was in danger or if he noticed something in her movements that drew his attention. The girl hesitates, her fingers curling into fists at her sides as she tries to decide whether to lie or tell the truth, but her voice refuses to form even a single word, as though the night itself is holding her silence hostage, waiting for something else to unfold before allowing her to speak. The man does not press her, and instead he glances toward the schoolyard behind her, his expression shifting ever so slightly as though he senses the tension drifting toward them through the wind, and she notices the way his jaw tightens as though he is calculating something important, something that might involve her. Her heartbeat grows louder, and she takes a small step back. Yet something stops her from running, because she cannot ignore the odd feeling that this man carries answers she's not even known she needed, and that his sudden appearance might not be a coincidence at all. The air between them grows heavier, and she tries to read his expression, but the dim light hides more than it reveals, and she wonders if he is dangerous or if he's the only safe thing she has encountered in months, and the uncertainty coils in her chest like a living thing refusing to settle. He finally asks if she needs help, and though his tone is calm, she senses an undercurrent of urgency, as if he already knows what she is running from, yet is waiting for her to admit it, and her breath stutters as she realizes that no one has asked her that question sincerely in a very long time. The distant sound of a door slamming far behind her echoes through the alley, and she flinches, her instincts screaming that the bullies might be coming closer, and she sees a flicker of awareness pass through the man's eyes, as if he too heard the sound and understood its implications. He extends a hand, not forcing, not demanding, but offering, and she feels her throat tighten as she stares at it, because accepting it might change everything, and she has no idea whether she is stepping toward danger or toward a future she never imagined possible. The night deepens around them, and she senses that the next decision she makes will shape her path in ways she cannot foresee, and as she looks into his eyes, she feels a strange spark of recognition. She cannot explain, while the sound behind her grows louder and the moment stretches thin as she waits to choose her next move. The moment stretches in the quiet night as the girl stares at the man's outstretched hand, and her breath trembles in her chest, because trusting anyone feels like stepping off a cliff, yet something about the steady calm in his eyes keeps her feet rooted to the ground instead of running as she has always done. He waits without moving a muscle, his presence controlled and patient, as though he understands the weight of her hesitation, and she wonders how someone who seems to belong to a different world entirely, could possibly recognize the fear she carries like a shadow that refuses to let her breathe. Her fingers twitch at her side, and she slowly inches toward him, drawn by a force she cannot explain. And as she does, the faraway sounds behind her grow sharper, as though danger is creeping closer step by step, reminding her that she has only moments to decide whether to stand alone or accept help from a stranger, whose intention she cannot yet read. The man lifts his gaze toward the alley entrance, and she sees the faint tightening of his jaw, the slightest shift in his stance, as though he is preparing for something unseen, and she realizes he is not just offering kindness but protection. A kind she has never known, and the thought unsettles her more than the cold winds spiraling around them. As she reaches out her hand, her fingertips brushing the air between them, she feels a sudden surge of doubt, for she wonders who he truly is, and why he would care about the fate of a girl he met in the shadows of a quiet street. And the uncertainty clings to her heart like a layer of frost. He speaks again, but softer this time, telling her she is not safe out here, and the simple truth in his words cuts through her fear like a beam of light piercing fog, and she feels something inside her shift, as though part of her long-buried hope is stirring awake for the first time in years. The girl takes a step closer, and the man subtly angles himself between her and the approaching noise, and she notices how effortlessly he assumes the role of a shield, as if he has done it countless times for people he cared about. And she wonders if he sees her as someone who needs saving or someone who deserves it. Their hands finally meet, and the moment her skin touches is a strange warmth blooms through her arms, spreading into her chest, and she almost pulls back from the unfamiliar sensation, yet she cannot deny the spark that flickers deep inside her, something both frightening and comforting at once. He leads her gently toward the parked car, his movements deliberate and protective, and she follows, even though her instincts scream that trusting someone like him, a man whose world seems far removed from her reality, could lead to a future she is completely unprepared to face. As they near the car, he slows, turning toward her with a seriousness that makes her heart beat unevenly, and he tells her that taking her with him is not a decision he makes lightly, and she senses that he is holding back truths. He is not yet ready to reveal truths that might explain the strange familiarity in the way he looks at her. The girl swallows hard, feeling the weight of the night press against her, as though it knows that the path before her is shifting in ways she cannot reverse, and she tries to steady her breath as the distant footsteps draw even nearer, closing the gap between her past and her present. The man opens the door and motions for her to get inside, and his tone carries a quiet urgency that tells her staying here any longer could cost her the fragile chance she's been given, a chance she does not fully understand but cannot bring herself to reject. She climbs in, her pulse racing with a swarm of thoughts she cannot untangle, and as he circles to the driver's side, she ponders the strange connection sparking between them, something that feels impossible yet undeniable, as though their paths were never meant to remain separate. The engine hums to life, and as the car begins to move through the darkened street, she glances back at the alley where her world almost collapsed, and wonders what awaits her now, with the man who sits beside her. While unspoken questions fill the space between them, and she senses that he is finally about to reveal the truth she's been waiting for, even as the night tightens around them, leaving her breathless for what he might say next.